Davis, and welcome to 24/7 Dad Class. If you've just joined us, this is the 5th session, and I'd like for you to continue to the 6th on up to the 10th, and after the 10th you can go back and start at 1 and come back up to the 4th session, and that will complete your Dad Class experience. You can follow along with me with your workbook or the handbook, whichever you prefer. And I'm just going to go through this. This is our curriculum, so you can follow along. And I won't always speak directly to everything in the book, but I will talk about all of the subject matter. So stay with me and let's get started. All right. Session 5 deals with communication. And communication is perhaps one of the most important areas of anyone's life, not just simply a 24/7 dad, but people in general. And if you know how to communicate effectively, you will be effective in what you do. But if you have problems communicating, then you will have problems in what you do. So we want to look at communication, but I have some warm-up questions for you just to get started, and this will help you to locate yourself. And the first question I have for you is, how strong are you in your communication, or what area are you most strong in your communication? For this one, I put my verbal and nonverbal communication. I think I'm very strong there, but I have a tendency to really be strong in my nonverbal communication, and sometimes that gives me away in terms of if I'm upset or whatever, you'll see that on my face. Now, some people are able to hide their nonverbals much better than others, but I tend to show mine. I know that about me. So in one way, that is a weakness, and another way, it's a strength. It depends on how you want to look at that or how you want to use it. But I'd like to know what area you feel that you're strongest in the area of communication. The second question I have for you is, what is your weakest area of communication? What is your weakest area of communication? And I think I've really sort of indicated my weakest area. While communication, verbal is strong, but nonverbal is also strong. So in many respects, I see that as a weak. I think that sometimes I allow situations and circumstances to affect how I communicate. And I have a tendency to want things to be orderly. And if things are disarray or in chaos, then it tends to affect how I come across. So I'm aware of that, and so I work to make sure that if I'm in that kind of situation, that I don't really allow it to affect my communication with others, especially when I want to be positive with them. And so I'd like to know what's yours. And you have your workbook, and you can just write in yours, what that weakness might be. The third question I have for what area that you need to learn how to better communicate? I guess that's the question I want to ask you. What area that you need to learn how to be better at communicating? Now, for me, I said when I'm in awkward situations and disorganization or conditions that are not favorable, it often affects my tone and my rate of speech, or you can tell if I'm upset. And again, it gets back to my nonverbal communication. What about you? What area that you could really stand some improvement in? I know that I always work on that. I work on how I come across because my environment can affect how I communicate with others. All right, let's turn a corner here, if you will. I want to talk about ways of communication. Ways of communication. But first, I'd like to make an overarching statement here before we get into ways of communication. One, the 24/7 dad communicates his thoughts, feelings, and actions on a daily basis in a way that respects others. He understands that problems with communication starts with him and no one else. Now, that is really where we want to be, men. We want to really look at ourselves, because communication really starts with you. And even if it starts with the other person, what you say and do can shut it down or change it. So we need to learn how to effectively communicate, especially to those around us, those that we love, those that we want to take care of, those that we want to nourish and love. And so oftentimes we say the worst things to the most important people, and we want to learn how to treat them so that we get better results, especially with our wives or with the mother of our children or with the children themselves. Okay, so let's look at ways of communicating. Okay, and the first posture of communication I want to talk about is called fight or flight posture. And this term is a psychological term, and it's taken from the study of human behavior. And it says that human beings are often in either fight or flight. If you're not going to fight, then you're going to flight. And so when we're upset or when anger is involved, we're often in one posture or the other. And we know that some people are able to manage that posture much better than others. Some people fly off the handle. Some people do things that they really regret later on because they haven't learned to manage the fight or flight posture that they might be in. So we're going to take a look at that. And the first posture that we want to take a look at here is the blame the other or get mad. When you blame other people and get mad, that is a posture that we often see when we're in the fight or flight mode. And this happens with people that are close to us, and I'm mainly looking at a husband and a wife, or a male and female, who are in a relationship, and there's friction, or there's a disagreement, or there's something, a problem that they need to work out. And so oftentimes we will find ourselves in this position. And when we're in this position, we tend to be dismissive. Okay, we will dismiss the other person. We will dismiss, the comments that are made, or we won't respond to them the way they should be responded to, or we may ignore them because they would only make us madder than what we are. So you then see someone who starts a fight, okay, and you're seeing someone who's avoiding the fight, or someone who is having problems with their mate or their wife or their significant other. And so you're going to see them either fight, or you're going to see them take a flight posture or back out of it. And sometimes women are a lot more aggressive in that area than men. They want to talk about things, and talking about those things really put them in a fight mode. And men tend to back off of that, and rightly so, because men tend to be a lot more explosive, and they do more damage if they actually get upset. Whereas I think women are sharing their emotions, and while they're upset, but they will not always act those emotions out in terms of physical attack or whatever. But men sometimes tend to do that, and that's why we need to really pay attention to how we respond to anger, and how we deal with this fight or flight posture as 24/7 dads. Let's look at the second position here of our posture, and that would be defensive or closed posture. Okay, when we're in a defensive posture, we're not really listening to the other person, but we are trying to defend ourselves, and we are thinking of a comeback. And so the person says something to you that you don't really like, and you're thinking of, how can I get them back? How can I defend myself? Okay, and so this is a defensive posture. And when you're in a defensive posture, you tend to be withdrawn, you tend to be in a stubborn mood, and you tend to give the silent treatment. Another thing with a defensive posture is denial, okay? We deny what the person says, or the person denies what you say, okay? Or we come up with excuses for things, okay? We, the wife may say to the husband, you need to get a job, or she may say it very defensively, why don't you get a better job? And the husband or the man may say, what do you mean? I have a job. But he's not really dealing with what she's saying because of the way she said it. But what she's saying is that what you're doing now is not netting enough income. We don't have enough money to meet all of our obligations, so you need to find more work. But she didn't say that in the most polite or respectful way. So he responds to it. He's in a defensive mood. She's in a fight mood. He's in a defensive mood, okay? And so he tends to deny what is said, or he makes excuses for what he should or shouldn't do. And then we come to the third posture here, and that posture is the open to change posture. And that's really where we want to get to. We want to always be open to change. And when you have an open to change posture, you make eye contact. You look at the person. Normally when you're in a defensive mood or posture, you don't make eye contact with the person. You evade their eyes, and sometimes you evade looking at them entirely. You look off. You look another way because you're in denial, or you're in avoidance. You're trying to get away from the situation because you can't fight, so you're going to flight. Okay, but in this case, with an open attitude, an open attitude for change, or open for change posture, there you are looking at the person. And so sometimes just looking at a person can change the dynamics between the two. You know, in this case, if the man would say to the woman who said, get another job, or go get a job, and he said, I got a job. But if he would just turn and look at her and said, hey babe, what do you mean by that? Okay, are you saying that I need a better job? Are you saying that you don't think that the job I have is good? What you're doing, you are bringing it to a place where you can get understanding, and then you're going to then require her, if you will, to explain what she means. But then I think this would be a check to her, and now she's going to come across softer and perhaps with a more definitive response than early on. But that had a lot to do with how you approached it. If you're open, but if you just get defensive and you fight back, or you send rockets across the bow, if you will, well, it's not going to change, okay? And a lot of times it really is up to one of those partners to bring it to calmness. And I'm saying, as a 24/7 dad, you can do that. And I think it will help you in your communication with your wife or your significant other, whatever the case may be. The other thing is that you begin to ask questions nicely. When you ask a question in a nice manner, it forces the other person to respond in a nice manner. I know that the question wasn't asked in a nice manner, but when you respond to that question in a nice manner, it changed the dynamics. And now this person is out there. In other words, it takes two to fight. So if you're not fighting and you're not going to fight, and you're just going to ask questions, then it forces that person to be more gentile, if you will, to be nicer in their response to you. And so, in effect, you have taken control of the situation. And what people don't realize is that the person who manages that and who brings the posture of the communication to a calmness is actually the one in control. And men have the position of leadership. And so this is a part of your leadership, is to bring the fight into control. In other words, there's there's a right way to fight and there's a wrong way to fight, okay? And the right way to fight is that you're open for change. You can undergo exchange of information and ideas because you need to know what the other person is thinking. And yes, sometimes there's emotions associated with it. But if you allow that to happen and you are really cognizant or aware, rather, of where you are in the fight or flight posture, then you can maneuver to safe ground where you both can come to an understanding and end up communicating effectively, okay? So in the open to change posture, you're trying to understand the person, is what I'm saying. You're trying to get a better understanding of what the person is talking about, what's bothering them. The other thing is that you're seeking clarity. It's always good to seek clarity because behind every outburst or anger or, disrespectful response, there's something there that needs to be dealt with. And so what you want to do is get to clarity. And so that takes a little finesse, if you will, on the part of the 24/7 dad. Actually, women can do it too, but this is about you. This is about the 24/7 dad, how you show leadership in your communication and how you are able to effectively communicate within your household or within your relationships. All right, so what I want to say here is that with the mother of my children, I am most often in what posture? With the mother of my children or with my wife, I'm often in what posture? I want you to write that down in your book. What posture are you in? Okay. Now, as you can see, you have three choices here. You have fight or flight, you have defensive close, and you have open to change. I chose open to change because I've always been very interested in effective communication, and I've been taught how to be an effective communication, believe it or not. And so I try to put that to practice. So I wrote here, I am most often in this posture, with my wife. I believe that I should look at myself first before focusing on my partner's behavior. Now that's a good place to be. Always look at your own behavior first before you deal with someone else's behavior, okay? Now I know when you're angry, you tend not to want to do that. So you have to have some awareness here. And I'm saying these are tips or good advice for how you can be more effective in your communication, especially when you're in a situation of fight or flight. And sometimes you're just in a situation of fight and there's no flight there. You're just duking it out, verbally. Well, here again, knowing how to maneuver the situation to a calmness and allow both partners to really express what they're really concerned about is something that you can do that will really help in that process. And so the next statement I want to make, and I want you to respond to it, looking at the three areas, fight or flight, defensive close, or open to change. This question is, or this statement I might say, is with my children, I am most often in what posture? With your children, what posture are you in? Are you in the fight or flight, or are you in the defensive close, or are you in the open for change? That's really important, okay? And answering these questions are going to help you to locate yourself in terms of perhaps what are some things that you need to work on in your communicating with those around you. Just finished part one. We're going to take a pause and we will start part two momentarily. So stay with us. This is session 5, part 2, and it's good to have you back. Let's get right back to it. So, the next statement I want to make to you is that when I'm with my friend, I'm most often in what posture? This posture. When I'm with my friends, I am most often in what posture? Here again, this will help you to locate yourself, to see where you are in this area of communication, the posture of your communication, I might say. Is it fight or flight? Is it defensive close, or is it open for a change? Okay, these are some questions that you can respond to in your handout or your workbook. Now, I want to talk about some tips for open to change communication, because that's really where we want to get to. Open to change communication. Value the need to change and listen. In order to be open to communication, you have to value the need for change, and in order for that to happen, you have to be willing to listen. Many times we're not willing to listen because we're so busy being defensive. We're trying to protect ourselves, and sometimes that's unnecessary, because you're not in any physical danger, but it's just a verbal fight. Okay, if you don't believe you need to change anything, you won't make the effort to listen, okay, to the need for change. If you think you have it all together and you got everything going for you, then you won't feel a need. But I tend to think that you're always going to need to see this, to consider this rather. You're always going to need to value listening. Listening is also a form of loving. We love people by listening to them. And I'm sure you've heard the wife or the significant other say, you don't listen to me, okay? You don't listen to me. And what they're really saying is that I don't have your attention. And so giving people your attention when you listen to them is a form of loving. And we all want to be loved. And if you love someone, you will listen to them. You will be open to what they have to say. And so that's a point that, or a tip rather, we really want to leave this session with, okay? We need to value the other person. Value the other person. We need to value what that person have to say. If you don't believe that someone else makes a good point, if you don't believe that they have anything good to say, then you may not value them. And that is not very good either. So listening to people and hearing what they have to say is a form of valuing them. And you will get a more positive response from them by valuing what they say. And you value what they say by listening to them. Then we need to be aware of our unusual posture or response to change. Sometimes we don't respond to change the way we really should, for whatever reason. As I said to you, my nonverbals give me away. So because I know my nonverbals give me away, I have to really watch my posture. What am I saying? How am I responding to my wife or my children? How do I come across? Okay, and I can check that, and I can make the necessary adjustments in my communication. I think we need to be aware of the mood that not only we're in, but the other person is in. In other words, we need to determine the mood of a person in order to communicate with them. Sometimes you don't want to talk about certain things if you see the person is not in the right mood. So mood is important. Timing is important. When you say something to someone and how you say something to one, all those things are very important. And I think that, most people, when they have something heavy on their minds or whatever, they just want to get it off. But it's important to really choose the right time to say what you want to say to people, because you want them to be in the best mood so you will get the best results. Now, here's a simple way that you can do that. is that you can establish this with your wife or mother of your children by simply saying, hey, honey, whenever I want to talk to you about something that's very important or give you some feedback about something you've done or whatever, I would like for you to listen. And the way we'll do this, and you can do the same thing to me, the way we will do this, I will ask you, are you open to feedback? If you tell me that you're not ready for feedback about you or about us, then I won't do it. But at some point in time, I would expect you to be ready. So I'm going to ask you before I get into whatever, I will ask you, hey, honey, are you open for feedback? I got something I want to say. You'll be amazed at how that can be the format you use to really smooth out communication. And the person will then be open for what you have to say because you've already agreed to what it's about and what you're trying to do. Now the person doesn't have to be defensive. You see, criticism is bad, but critique is different. In other words, critique is constructive criticism, okay? There's criticism and then there's constructive criticism. In other words, you're critiquing constructively. You are doing things that will help the person, not to destroy the person or tear them down. And so this little method of asking for feedback is a good way for you to share some important and sensitive things with your wife or the mother of your children, okay? And as a 24/7 dad, you are in control when you do that, and it will help you to facilitate clarity and understanding in your communication, especially about those very sensitive things, okay? So we want to also be aware of our surroundings, okay? Don't discuss certain sensitive things in the wrong place. You should never discuss argumentative things or very sensitive things with your wife or with the mother of your children around the children, okay? And you never want to put your spouse or your wife or your significant other or your mother of your children down in front of the children. You never want to do that. The other thing is that you don't want to discuss negative things or argumentative things in public. It is detrimental to do so. And people that do that really don't understand public etiquette or interpersonal etiquette. I will never denigrate my wife in public. I will never say anything that will that will shame her, or that will embarrass her, that will belittle her, or whatever, no matter how angry I might be, because I know that is damaging to her, and it's also damaging to our relationship. So we want to understand where we are to have our discourse. And you're not supposed to have negative, sensitive discourses in the public, okay? And just little things. You'll be amazed at how praising your spouse or the mother of your children among other women really will elevate your relationship with her. I remember once when I first got married to my wife, we had a party at our house one weekend, and a lot of the people we knew came to the party, and a couple of the ladies there were sort of on the make, they really liked me, and I knew that. And we all are gullible, and we really like for people to appreciate us, no matter who we are. But you can take that too far. But I knew that my wife also knew that the dynamics were there, and that these two women were sort of, they wanted my attention, and they were flirting and whatever. And yet we were all friends, And so I'm aware of this. So what I did what is called a strength bombardment exercise, which is kind of involved, but I'll really just give you a little snap of it. You just say positive things about the people around you, okay? You look at the person and you say something positive about that person. So I had everybody in the room look at someone else and say something positive about them. And then I'd ask that person, how do you feel about those comments, you know? Because most people are not used to getting positive comments in that manner. And so when I got to my wife, I then made positive comments about her. I talked about what a great person she was. I talked about all of her positive attributes and how much I loved her. And you could just see the change in expression on her face, as well as the change in expression on the other two ladies' face. What they expressed was, I see, the door is not open there, or it's not what I thought it was. But what my wife saw was that he elevated me in the front of my peers. He showed that I valued. He showed that he valued me. And it was my way of loving her, okay? And I'm saying that that's just a small example of what you can do in public to enhance your relationship and your communication with your wife or your significant other or the mother of your children. But that will get you more than anything else. In other words, there's a saying that you get more flies with honey than with salt water or whatever, right? So it is true that that you can say things in public that will change the dynamics in private, okay? But we need to be careful about the environment that we're in at any given time, okay? And the others that we want to use the skills that we're learning here to employ or to rather apply them in our lives. The whole purpose of this is to go back and put this into practice. And you have a manual, not a manual rather, but you have a workbook, and you're writing all these things down. You should really work through this workbook, and when you get to the checklist, you should set up activities that will reinforce these principles of communication that we're talking about, or the types of posture that we can have to change negative dynamics, if you will. And now I want to switch gears here and deal with talking to our children. Just for a few minutes, I want to talk about that. First of all, we need to honor what they want. Always honor what your children want. Don't just put down what they want. The child says, well, I'd like to be a doctor. Well, don't say, you'll never be a doctor. You have to go to school. That's the wrong thing to say. What you say is that is a good aspiration. I will do all that I can to help you. That is something I think that's a good dream to have. It's a good goal to work toward. You say something positive about that rather than putting the kids down. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who said that their parents put down their dreams when they were smaller. And what you need to know is that your words are very important to your children. You can make or break them by what you say. Your words become balusters. You know what a baluster is? Like a baluster on stairs you hold on to, or it sort of guides you to a certain place. That's what the positive words of parents do for their children. They are balusters. They are like guides, and many times the children will not go beyond the words of their parents. If the parent says you're going to be no good, okay. That's what I'm told. So we tend to operate within those bounds. But if the parent says, son, you can do anything your heart's desire. Okay, now you've just released the child to be creative and to really work out their potential. Okay, and I believe that's what my dad did to me and all of his children. He always told us that the sky's the limit. that it just depends on you. Okay? You can do anything you want to do. He always said that to me. And I believed him. And I've seen that kind of result in my life. I've gone after things that were much bigger than me. And obviously I could have done even greater than what I have done, but I believe it was because of what he said to me that really urged me on to do the things I've done. And so what you say to your children can be very crucial to what they ultimately do. And so we want to, one, honor what they see, honor what they want, unless it's diabolically wrong, unless it's criminal, unless it's a break of the law, or, it's bad, then of course that's a teaching point. But in most cases, it's just aspiration. I want to be an astronaut. I want to be, a basketball player. And that's probably something that's more real, being a basketball player. But being a brain surgeon is real too, if you make it real, and you can achieve it. Just ask Dr. Carson, who really grew up as a kid in the projects. He grew up in poverty, but he became a very renowned physician. So the sky is the limit. The sky is the limit. You can determine how well your child does by what you say and do with your child. The second point I want to make about talking to our children is that we need to send good messages to ourselves first. And that will enable us to send good messages to them. But if we are sending negative messages to ourselves, we tend to send negative messages to other people. And when you are negative, then you won't really respond to their dreams in the way that you should, because you're thinking negative. If you're thinking negative, you will say negative things. If you're thinking negative, you will do negative things. If you think positive, you will do positive things. And so we need to train ourselves, be aware of what we think about ourselves and about others. And if you don't like yourself, then you are going to be a hindrance to yourself. I believe that successful people, for the most part, are people who like themselves. You have to come to the terms with yourself. And, when I grew up, I didn't really like myself. I didn't like my stature. I didn't like where I lived. I didn't like the structure of the family. And we didn't have certain things. And I really didn't like that. I didn't like the farm. I didn't like any of that, right? But there came a point in my life when I said, you have to like you. I have to like me. If I don't like me, who's going to like me? And I tell you, that has made a difference in my life. I like me. You need to like you. And if you like you, you will like others. If you're positive with yourself, you will be positive with those around you. And I want you to just read the verbiage in your workbook about this, because I think it's very, very important that we send positive messages to ourselves. And the next point I want to mention is that we need to avoid labels. Don't label your child. Don't tell your child that you are crazy, or that you are dumb, or that you are an idiot, or all those negative things. Those things will destroy them. Those things will dampen their self-esteem, and it will cause them not to fare in many areas. Sometimes academically, sometimes physically, or whatever the case may be. We want to watch what we say to our children. For that matter, watch what you say to anybody, grown or child, but more specifically children, because children are in a impressive stage, and what you say to them can make or break them. And so I just want to encourage you to watch the labels, okay? Don't label your child. And don't allow other people to label your child. I remember my wife, when our son started school, he had some issues, learning issues. He had dyslexia, and so he had to learn how he learned. Now, she intervened, and she would not allow teachers to label him or to put him in a certain category or whatever. She worked with him, and we worked through that. He ended up going to college, and he's a very successful person today because my wife understood that. She didn't allow others to label her son. Don't you allow others to label your son or daughter, even though they may be struggling in an area. But that just means that they need help and they need to find themselves. No one is good at everything, but we have to find what we're good at. But if we're told we're good for nothing, then we may not even look for anything. But no one is successful in every area. But what they are successful in tends to override all the other things. In other words, it sets them apart. Nobody talks about how well Michael Jordan does physics, okay? Or how well he is in history. Those things, they don't ever come up. Why? Because he's good in basketball. Basketball trumps everything. That's the best of him. So you don't even deal with his weaknesses, but he does have them. Why you don't deal with them? Because he's brought out the best that he has. And that's what you want to allow your children to do. You want to help them to bring out the best that they have, and the best will override the mess. The best will override the negatives or the things that they can't do. And we all are subject to that as well. And then we also want to focus on their goals, okay? Help them to set goals, okay? And when they have their own goals, don't just kick them out of the room. Don't just downplay them, but look at them and be creative about how they might achieve that. And what you might want to do is teach them to break the goal down. That if you're going to become a senator of the United States of America, well, you don't start being a senator when you're 30 years old. It really starts back in high school. What are you doing? How good are you in your history? Do you know your nation you live in? You know, do you understand the government? There are lifetime learning situations that comes to bear when you run for a senator. So you just can't decide one day to be a senator rather, and to be effective at that, or to effectively do the work. It is something that you really have to plan for. You have to prepare yourself for. And then at the right moment or juncture, you then can carry it out. And so it is with our children. We want to help them set goals and set realistic goals. And sometimes we'll have to break the goals down into bite-sized pieces. I always tell my children and others that the way you eat an elephant is one bite at a time. You can eat an elephant, but you can't do it at one. You do it one bite at a time. And so we need to teach them how to break down their goals so they are achievable. Because if they are not achievable, if their goals are unreachable, if the goals are too lofty for them to reach initially, they may get discouraged and decide that they don't want to do it. So I think your job, or our jobs, if you will, as 24/7 dad, is to help our children to organize and manage their goals and break them down into objective pieces so that they can, again, eat the elephant one bite at a time. All right, this is the end of session 5. I've enjoyed being with you. And remember, all you have to do is click for session 6. And when you get there, I'll be there. We'll see you then. Bye-bye.